Ukraine weapons and funding if you were
I would sit down. Let me just put it a nicer way. If I'm president, I will have that war settled in one day, 24 hours.
No, I would like to set a goal on a personal level and professional level. I would say let's set it at 100 days and move our way back and figure a way we can do this in the near term to make sure that the solution is solid, it's sustainable.
Well, that gentleman that you just heard from is President-elect Donald Trump's nominee for special envoy to Russia and Ukraine. His name is Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg. And as you could hear, I mean, he's kind of throwing cold water on the notion that the war in Ukraine will end on day one of Trump's second term. But to be fair, Trump has also lowered expectations as it pertains to ending the war in Ukraine. And we're going to get to his, lowering of expectations and what he has said in recent months in just a moment. But before we get to that, it is important to understand that, Donald Trump tends to make all these declarative statements about the amazing things he's going to do on day one. Then he tends to walk it back. So as Fox News reports at a Mar-a-Lago news conference on Tuesday, Trump said he knows Putin would like to meet with him, but believes such a meeting would be inappropriate until he's officially sworn in as president on Inauguration Day on January 20th. I mean, he has met with other foreign leaders, or he's had phone calls with other foreign leaders, namely Benjamin Netanyahu. But nonetheless, he added that he'd like to see the fighting come to an end within 6 months. So Jake, you had day one, then you have Trump now saying 6 months. Lieutenant General Keith Kellogg saying 100 days, nice little compromise between Trump from several months ago, or I should say several years ago, because it was in 2023, versus Trump today.
Yeah, I mean, look, Trump is in a lot of ways a standard politician, but he's smart enough to play an authentic populist, which he's not. So, but look, I don't know. He's kind of an old school politician in promising the moon in the sky, and it's annoying to me because I know he's not going to do that stuff. But apparently it's good strategy because his voters believed him. But really on day one, I mean, there's the only way you could resolve it on day one is if you go to Ukraine and say, we're pulling all your funding, surrender the territories that Russia is in right now immediately. Right?
Yeah.
That's the only way to end it on day one. And even then it would take some time, right? And even then the Ukrainians would push back and go, no, we don't want to give up all of our territory. Not all of it, but all the ones that the Russians occupy. So it was an absurd, nonsensical thing to say in the first place. But ironically, I would say the Democrats should have had enough sense to make other promises that were a little bit more realistic, but at least ones that the American people supported. So I'm curious to see if MAGA is really believed he was going to do it on day one. But then oftentimes they do have excuses, and sometimes it's legitimate. A lot of them say, look, I know he's full of crap, and I know he's not going to get it done on day one. I just hope he gets it done in 6 months. And if that's your belief, okay, I think that's fair.
So before we get to what I think is going to happen and what Trump is likely to do, I do want to give you one more comment that Trump made. This is on December 16th. Trump is talking about ending foreign wars. He did talk about the war in Gaza, but he also talked about Ukraine. Take a look.
I think we're going to be in a good place in the Middle East. I think the Middle East will be in a good place. I think actually more difficult is going to be the Russia-Ukraine situation. I see that as more difficult.
When you say that,
I don't think they should have allowed missiles to be shot 200 miles into Russia. I think that was a bad thing. And that brought the Koreans in, North Korea.
So already on December 16th, he was kind of lowering expectations, but also kind of passing some blame to the Biden administration for supplying Ukraine with these rockets, which they then used to, fire into Russia. And so he's arguing, well, now the war is a little more complicated, a little more difficult to deal with, especially with the involvement of North Korea. But a month prior to that, on November 7th, the Kremlin had already been shutting down Donald Trump's alleged ability to end the war quickly. Dmitry Peskov, who is the Kremlin's press secretary, says, of course, it was a bit of an exaggeration when he said he would do it overnight. If the new administration seeks peace rather than continued conflict, it will be better than the previous one. And as for Putin, the Russian president did not comment to anything regarding the war in Ukraine or ending it quickly, stating, "I do not know what is going to happen now. I have no clue." Very inspiring words. Now, look, in regard to MAGA and what I think how they are likely to respond, it really depends on whether or not Donald Trump is willing to pull military funding from Ukraine. That's what they care about. They don't want to see resources go toward foreign wars when things are falling apart here in the United States. That's their argument. They're not as concerned with the geopolitical ramifications of Russia taking land from Ukraine. So as long as Donald Trump follows through with his promises to stop funding that war, I think MAGA will be fine with him. I don't think anyone genuinely, sincerely thought Trump is going to snap his fingers and end this massive multi-year war on day one. What people want is for the United States government to stop funding these wars. So I think, I don't know if Trump is willing to do that. He has made some statements implying that he will. But I am curious, do you think he's gonna do that, Cenk?
Yeah, I do, and I think there's actually good news buried in this story. So I'll get to that in a second. First, just to correct some of Donald Trump's statements. So he said they fired into Russia, then they brought in the North Koreans because of that. No, they're going to bring in the North Koreans whether they're fired into Russia or not. That's kind of a Russian talking point. And then he's like, well, now the situation is different because they brought in the North Koreans. No, they were already there before the election, and you were still saying day one. So okay, so those are the things that he was not truthful about. But the good news is, look, there was one way to end it on day one, and it was what I just said, which is that he could have said, hey, Ukrainians, we're outie. And so you got to give up your territory to the Russians. And I halfway expected him to do that. And so I'm a little bit pleasantly surprised that he hasn't done that he's bothering to negotiate over 6 months so he can get the Ukrainians a little bit better deal, we hope. That's not such a bad thing. It could have been much worse given what he said and given what his policy is. And finally, to answer the question that you asked, Anna, no, we're not going to send that much more money to Ukraine. I don't know if it's zero, but it's probably going to be near zero. And we're going to get out of that war. That was one of his top promises. He can't go back on that. And he has no reason to go back on that. So the fact that he's not forcing the Ukrainians to a much larger surrender overall is good news.
One other thing that I'll give him credit for, because it is a departure from the thinking that we saw from the neocons, certainly during the Bush administration. If you can remember, Cenk, one of the slogans of the Bush administration was that they do not negotiate with terrorists. And so, look, unfortunately, in the realm of geopolitics, like you do have to speak to your adversaries in some cases, or unsavory figures like Vladimir Putin, for instance, right? So no one in the US government has spoken to Vladimir Putin, or at least the president hasn't spoken to Vladimir Putin since February of 2022. Donald Trump has made a point to state that he is going to have a meeting with Vladimir Putin very soon to basically negotiate an end to this war. And so that's been reported on by Reuters. So when asked about his strategy to end the war, Trump told Newsmax, well, there's only one strategy and it's up to Putin. And I can't imagine he's too thrilled about the way it's gone because it hasn't gone exactly well for him either, meaning this war in Ukraine. And they have lost a ton of soldiers, which is why North Korea has stepped in and provided additional soldiers for Russia's, war on Ukraine. And US Congressman Mike Waltz, who I've got no love for, but nonetheless, the incoming national security advisor said on Sunday that he expected a call between Trump and Putin in the coming days and weeks. So look, obviously, we don't know what those conversations are going to be, but I do think that having those conversations, opening up lines of dialogue could be beneficial in finding a peaceful resolution, an end to this war. That is what I'm hoping for. Obviously, I'm being overly optimistic, but I'm curious what you think, Cenk.
Yeah, I gotta say that Trump has surprised me on Russia a couple of times because I thought he was, after that humiliating press conference where he had the slumped shoulders and said Russia's right, not us, that for sure that he was in their back pocket. But a couple of times He's resisted them for at least supporting them 100%. And Trump is not known for being a nuanced guy. He's a blunt instrument. So the fact that he is not hitting the gas pedal and going, that's it, Ukraine, give a third of your country to Russia right now, or give half your country to Russia right now, right? He's not doing that. So in the context of the different terrible things Trump could have done on this issue, it's more subtle and nuanced than I would have expected, and a little bit more pro-Ukrainian than I would have expected. So I'll take the win.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.